Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Cocktails After Dark. Today on the counter I've got a bunch of bottles, I've got 4 mixing glasses, I've got a couple of books, and a whole pile of things running through my head. So the theme of today's episode is I went through the liquor cabinet and I pulled out a bottle of something that we don't use that often, and that is the Hayman's London Sloe Gin. Now, I've made exactly, one cocktail out of this. Or one cocktail show out of this. And Sloe Gin is not something that I've had a lot of experience with. So I went through the books to find Sloe Gin recipes, and I pulled out first the Cafe Royale cookbook. Cafe Royale cocktail book. This is from 1937. And like a lot of cocktail books, it's all done in alphabetical order. There's a couple of ways that cocktail books are put together. Sometimes it's by ingredient, and sometimes it's by name of cocktail. This one's name of cocktail in alphabetical order. And so I get to the BL section, I come across Black Hawk Rye Whiskey Sloe Gin, 1937. And I think, okay, I'm going to look this up. I'm going to figure out a little bit more about this cocktail, where it comes from, what its background is, maybe the original book that it showed up in. Do a little bit of research. First thing that pops up is a Robert Hess YouTube video from 2011. YouTube wasn't around in 19 anything. In 2011. And he attributes it to a 1977 cocktail book, but he says, you know what, it's probably from an earlier one. And I find it here in 1937. I start going through my cocktail books, and I find it in this 1948 Old Mr. Boston cocktail book. This was my Uncle Bob's. Same basic recipe. This one calls for rye whiskey. This one calls for rye whiskey or bourbon. And then I go to the EUVS database, where they've compiled a bunch of old cocktail books. It's not exhaustive by any means, but they have a lot there. And I searched through and I found one from 1913 by Jacques Straub. Same basic recipe, 1-to-1. The Jacques Straub recipe is 3/4 of an ounce of each of the Sloe Gin and rye whiskey. And I find it very interesting that Jacques Straub wants rye whiskey because he was the head bartender at the Pendennis Club for a lot of years before he started writing these books. And I would have thought at the Pendennis Club, bourbon would be the mixer that they would use, not rye whiskey. So today I'm going to do the cocktail using the Hayman's Sloe Gin, and I'm going to mix it with some rye whiskeys and some bourbons that I have here on the counter, and we're going to taste through them and we're going to see what the differences are. So straight up, I'm going to use this Hayman's Sloe Gin. I'm going to put a 1 1/4 ounce of Sloe Gin in each of my mixing glasses. And for everybody who keeps telling me that it's a formula, okay, formula, I say recipe, formula, whatever. Each of the formulas for this is fairly vague. Most of them tend to lead me to believe that you mix it in a mixing glass and then put it into a cocktail glass. I've seen references in a couple of places where it looks like you build it in a rocks glass, which I think would be perfectly fine in this instance because it really is 2 ingredients that you're stirring together to get them cold, and you're adding a cherry on top. So doing it in a rocks glass, if that's what you have, I think that would be fine. Now, let's see, what are we going to do? We're going to do 1 1/4 ounces of the 1792 small batch bourbon, and so I'm going to put that in this first mixing glass. I'm going to put the bottle behind so I don't get confused. I have cleaned out my jigger so it's fresh. I've got some Basil Hayden's bourbon. Let's see, what's that going to bring to the party? This is Dillon's Rye. Dillon's is a distillery not far from us here in Ontario. And I really like this rye in mixed drinks. And as you can see, the bottle is almost empty. I've got enough. So in that goes. I'll rinse out the jigger again. And the last is this wild card from Quebec. Julie and I got this over the summer in Quebec. We haven't tasted it yet. St. Lawrence Rye. so in that goes. I'm going to ice, stir, and pour these one at a time so they don't get over diluted. Okay, first one.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends.
Okay.
Wow, that's, what's our variation today? I guess,
Different
like rye?
different ryes or bourbons. Oh, maraschino cherries.
Woohoo!
Okay, so the keen-eyed amongst you are going to say there's different amounts in each glass. There's two things going on. They're not all the same glass. They look like they're the same Nick and Nora's, but they're not all the same Nick and Nora. They're different manufacturers. And the other thing that's going on is, as I moved the camera, I think this one had a little bit
A
more,
little longer.
little,
So it might
little
be
longer.
a little. Well, and maybe we like it better that way. Maybe it needs.
Might be a little more diluted. Okay, are there actually still cherries?
I
in
don't
here?
know. Do you
Oh,
need,
there are still cherries in here.
do we have other cherries? I just
We do, but these were out, so
Okay, I was gonna say
we get a cherry in each one.
I do like a good maraschino cherry.
Now, I did different ryes because we only have one slow gin. Where we live, the LCBO only carries one brand of slow gin.
Is it that one?
It's that one. And it's not, I guess it's not a big seller. And so they only carry one. This we got in Quebec. We were in Quebec 2 days ago. And I
And
probably
we could have got more slow gin.
could have got
yeah.
different slow gin in Quebec City.
Oh yeah.
So most of the recipes call for rye.
Dylan's?
Some of the recipes call for bourbon.
I don't know this one.
No. I don't think we've ever used it on the show before.
Okay.
So let's see what different brands of rye or bourbon bring to a slow gin cocktail called the Black Hawk.
Okay. That was pretty good.
Okay.
So I have no issues. If it's been slightly more diluted, that's perfectly fine.
Huh.
That one's very similar.
Okay. Let's switch spots.
Okay. Oh, is that the...
That's so that's a rye whiskey from St. Laurent.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest we just taste these first before
Yeah,
we
before
start
we-
tasting
yeah, yeah,
these.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And even
yeah.
then, I will say that when people ask me about drinks,
Yep.
because, you know, you casual conversation, oh, how's that going? I always make the same observation that older drink recipes are straight up alcohol. Like, there's no mix. And so you have
No.
to really be aware. Like, they're meant for sipping and they're meant for... So tasting for them is... that's...
Well, and that's
I'll be sitting down the rest of the day and not doing anything particularly serious.
no. And so when you go back, I mean, when I go back to the 1913 version, it was 3/4 of an ounce of each. But when you move forward into the 1948s, it's 1 ounce and 1/4 of each.
This one's really different.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one's distinctly different. And that one's different again.
Yeah.
So these two were similar in how they tasted to me, whereas these two are distinctly different from each other
And from these.
those.
So both of these I would categorize as smooth, not very challenging. In that you drink it and you go, yeah, I'm drinking bourbon, and you don't get any really slow gin. You get a little bit of sweetness. These two are spicy, and that one is challenging.
There's a flavor
don't
that
mean-
I can't. No, it's got a lot more flavors.
Well, yeah, I don't
a lot
mean,
more flavor profile.
I don't mean challenging in a bad way. I mean challenging in that there's so much going on, and there's so many different flavors, and it's spicy.
But what is that flavor that I can't identify that's in that?
I don't know. So I poured a little bit of it there.
No, but I want to.
Okay. So I mean,
So generally, I like this cocktail.
I like it too.
I like it with all of these.
all for different reasons.
Okay, so let's look more deeply into this one because this one definitely has a different flavor to it. Can I put the lid on it so I can read it?
Yeah.
Which one is it? This one?
This one.
This one. Okay.
So this is a locally in Quebec produced rye.
It says it's inspired by the sea. Inspiré par la mer.
So their distillery is right on the St. Lawrence at the mouth of the St. Lawrence.
Okay.
Oh, so they're using
Commercial
they're
malt.
using 20% barley malt and 80% rye.
Yeah. It's a fascinating flavor. Like it is.
So if I could make this happen, I would love to take some of these small batch whiskeys from small producers in Ontario and Quebec and go and visit the Whiskey Tribe in Austin, Texas on their YouTube channel and taste through them and have them sort of explain to me what they think about them.
Because they're definitely.
Because they're experts.
Yes.
They're experts. And then the same sort of thing with these bourbons. I'd love to sit down with a bourbon night. It's bourbon night because that's all they talk about is bourbons. And I'd love to do some cocktails with them with different bourbons and sort of see what they're tasting in them because I can't adequately describe these other than I like them all for different reasons.
Like I can't put my finger on it, but there's a really interesting, lovely flavor to that.
Now, we come to the other elephant in the room is we made all of these with one type of sloe gin.
Yes.
Sloe gin is a liqueur. Well, it's kind of a liqueur. It's kind of a liqueur in that it's a flavored gin.
But,
and every manufacturer
gin is flavored, though, but yeah.
It would be different. Every manufacturer's sloe gin would be different, and it would bring again a different.
This is a very complicated drink. You could spend forever just making versions of this if you had the money to buy all of those.
And the other interesting thing is that I don't see this cocktail in a lot of later cocktail books.
It goes away.
It goes away. And is that because it's just 2 alcohols and no sugar and no fruit juice, and the only sugar really is the cherry?
I don't know. I mean, they're huge recipe books of a lot of drinks.
Okay, so if you had to pick a favorite, even though you like them all, they're all your children, but if you had to pick a favorite... Okay, it changes again the closer we get to the cherry.
Because I keep having to reach over, I'm holding it very strangely.
Okay, one last sip, and then we'll come to a verdict.
This is how we get in trouble, though. This is no more driving today. This one.
That's your favorite?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I had to rank them, I would drink any of them. If you dropped any of them in front of me, I'm happy.
I would say I like these two equally for very different reasons, but I would probably agree with you that the one made with Basil Hayden, it would be my favorite. This would be my second favorite. This would be my favorite on a day where I wanted to challenge myself. This one I find bland and boring.
It could, but now that being said, in defense of this one, it is the one that had a little bit more water in it.
A little bit more dilution. That is true. Okay.
Any day you could serve me any of them, and I think it's actually, there's something about this one that's just a little bit sweeter.
Yes.
That kind of finishes it off a little bit more.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe if you were to drop more syrup in either of them,
I guess
that would change.
That's another.
You know,
yeah. I should weigh the cherry and the syrup and and put it in. Okay, so our conclusion is there's no real conclusion.
Beyond, we like it.
We like the cocktail. You could make it with bourbon. You could make it with rye, and we would like any of these if you dropped it in front of us for different reasons.
Can I admit that I was totally surprised because I did not think that a sloe gin and a bourbon or rye would. I for some reason in my mind, I said no. Those do not put those together and just straight up with nothing else.
So here I am. I'm flipping through the Cafe Royal cocktail book, and I'm only this far in, and I find one with sloe gin, and I think, oh, maybe I should keep going because it's just whiskey and sloe gin. Maybe I should keep. And then I thought, no, this is the first one that I came to. I'm going to make it.
I was concerned that the two, because sometimes we have things that have two alcohols in them, and it's just
just doesn't work. Doesn't work. Okay, so to this end,
sorry, sidetracked.
there's a bunch of things I'd like to know. Have you ever heard of this cocktail? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever heard of this cocktail? Let me know in the comments if you can find this cocktail earlier than the Jacques Straub cocktail in 1913. I have to look at the whiteboard because at this point I don't remember really what's going on. From the Jacques Straub cocktail in 1913, I'd like to know where this comes from, where the history is of this. And I'm also very interested in Jacques Straub, in why did he choose rye whiskey when he very obviously worked at the Pendennis Club, and that would be bourbon, Kentucky bourbon, all day long.
Yes.
So what was it about his palate that he thought rye whiskey was better in this cocktail than bourbon? Maybe he liked a challenging cocktail.
Who knows? Who knew?
Who knew?
Jacques Straub. Did you know him?
It's got to be.
I'm looking out there. Did you know him?
Do you know him?
Can you tell us anything?
Are you 95 and you knew Jacques Straub?
Okay. I'm watching YouTube.
Thanks for stopping by. Give this one a try. See you again soon. That was a really long one.
You talk a lot sometimes.
4 cocktails.
I'm totally eating the cherry, though. These are really good, though. Right?
And they're doing it in alembic still.
What is an alembic still?
It's different than other stills.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Hold on, come back.